What's up everybody, welcome back to Krebsbach Racing. Today we're going to do a video on why you should buy a 128i. We'll go through the different cars like this that you can buy. We'll go through the modifications I've done to this car. We'll do a before and after dyno, and then we'll also take this car for a test drive. Let's get into the different cars you can choose from. Right off the bat, I'm looking for something that is a driver's car. Something you can take to the track, you can do some sessions in, do some autocross, kind of an everything car. You can go get groceries if you want to, take it to the lake, that kind of car that kind of does everything. I'm going to narrow it down right away with something that's rear wheel drive, something that is a 5 or 6 speed manual, and we're going to set the budget at $10,000, so something under that. Pardon my board here, but we're going to go through the different choices I've chosen here. BRZ FRS. This is a lightweight car, around 2,800 pounds. Handling is decent, looks decent, and it's a more modern car. They started making those in 2013, so anything you find is going to be a little bit newer. Shouldn't have too much rust on it. The cons, it's a smaller car. Like with the weight, it's 2,800 pounds, so you're going to get a smaller car with that. Not a lot of backseat space. The power is my biggest gripe on the BRZ. They make 200 horsepower, but the torque just doesn't match it. 150 torque. I've driven these cars before and they are pretty gutless in the mid-range. I'm just not a fan of that. They're also over the price range. You can find these in the $12,000 to $15,000 range usually for a decent one. Nothing really super cheap. Maybe you could find a beater, but I'm looking for something a little bit nicer. Next up we have the BMW E36 E46. If it were up to me and the budget didn't matter, this is what I would get. E36 or E46. They make really good power. E36s are in the 240s, somewhere in there. E46s in the 300s. A little bit heavier car, around 3,200 to 3,400 pounds, but they're also very expensive. If you're going to find a decent one, they're in the, again, $12,000 to $15,000 range for an E36. E46s are even higher, sometimes $15,000 to $20,000 and $25,000. Next option is the S2000. One of the pinnacles of a driver's car, I would say. Very lightweight, great handling, great looking car. Engine is fun to drive, but also lacks torque, in my opinion. You really have to use the RPMs to get the car moving. If you're driving around town in one of those cars, I've had one before. I had one with Jeremy Swenson, one of my good buddies. It almost feels like you're racing everybody because you have your foot to the floor. Try and just get from light to light. S2000s are also more on the expensive side. These things have really gone up in value. Parts are hard to find. You can find a decent one for maybe 15 to 20, 25,000 even, and some of those cars are even going to have super high miles, 150,000 miles plus. Next we have some honorable mentions. C5, C6 Corvette. These are kind of out of the budget and not very practical, so I got rid of those. RX-8s, just because of the engine alone, they really don't make a lot of power. 4 doors though, which is great. That's about the only positive I have from those. Miatas, I'm a little too tall for those, and I think anytime I see anybody in a Miata, they get laughed at, I believe. Mustangs, no, not a fan. They're kind of too heavy. Same with Camaro, too heavy. 350Z is one that I considered going through. They make a little bit more power, around 300 horsepower, but they're also a 2-seater, so not very practical. And the drifters have pretty much wrecked most of those and most of those. So it brings me to the choice that I went with, which is the BMW 128i. Pros for this car: it makes decent power, 230 horsepower, 200 torque. It's a 3-liter inline 6, so it has a little bit more power to go around, a little bit more torque to go with its power. More modern car. They started making these in 2008 to 2013, and you can find these dirty cheap. Most of them I found between $5,000 and $10,000, around 100,000 miles. It's tough to find a manual, but they are out there to find. Exhaust sounds decent on them. They're obviously an inline 6, and they're easily upgradable. They have a big sister, which is the 135i twin turbo, which is more of the sports car type, and you can swap a lot of parts back and forth. They're also interchangeable with the 3 Series BMW, so the M3s, you can switch a lot of parts from those onto the 128i as well. Power is kind of in the middle. I already mentioned it a little bit, but 230, 200 is kind of right in the middle, a little bit more than some of these other, the FRS and the S2000, so at least it has some torque to get you around for daily driving. Now I know what you're thinking. All of these cars, S2000s, BMWs, BRZs, these are all sports cars, and this is not. Which you would be right. They're not that great looking cars. They're more of a commuter car, but with the right modifications, you can turn them into a pretty fun car. I've already taken my 128i to the track this spring. We went to MA Performance's Proving Grounds, and we did some autocross with it, and all we had done to it was just rims and tires and exhaust. And the car also came with a welded diff, which didn't help the handling at all. I'll let my good buddy Hans give you a 10-second review on how the car handled its first autocross. Driving impressions of the BMW.
It's a piece of shit. Usually, every car I've ever driven can do something well, except for that one. I can't do anything.
Now, Hans's review is pretty accurate in my opinion. The biggest gripe I had with the car was that the suspension was way too soft. So any input you had to put in, whether it was steering, braking, throttle, it just didn't respond for at least a half second to a second. And the rear diff being locked was absolutely horrible. The car just wanted to go straight. It didn't want to turn in. It was very difficult to drive. So for its first outing, it did not do well, but hopefully the modifications that we do to this car will straighten everything out. All right, this is a 2011 BMW 128i. It is a 5-speed manual, slick top, so it has no sunroof. Kind of hard to find, a little bit of a rare car, but it was a base model, so not many options done to it. We've done a few things already. We'll go around the outside quickly. We put a 135i bumper along with an eBay lip on the front of it. Every modification for this car that didn't need to be expensive, we tried to go as cheap as we could as far as cosmetically. These rims I actually picked up from somebody local. They're around $300. These are 17x8 Rio Salernos with a plus 30 offset and a 225/45 Kumo V730 on them. They fit pretty well. Without a little camber, you will end up rubbing with them. But the rear of the car, I also did a 135i rear bumper. Has a little gray diffuser on the back, looks a little nicer. Also did the black line taillights and an eBay lip as well. The eBay lip, you never know what you're going to get with eBay, and this one was just a little bit taller than I would have liked, but we just left it on there. It's not a huge deal. Maybe give us a few more downforces in the rear. Like I said before, there are a lot of models above this one, as this is a base model, so I swapped out the interior for an M Sport interior. This has a red inlay on the doors and also red seats. These are sport seats. The base seats are actually really flat on the bottom down here. These ones actually come with bolsters on the sides and the bottom, so they hold you in decent. Great for track driving and also very comfortable. Let's get into the engine modifications. First thing I did is there is a charcoal filter inside of the airbox. We deleted that, added a K&N air filter, and also added an intake elbow down here. You can buy these intake elbows online. They're about $80–90. I ended up getting mine off of Amazon. It's just a 3¼ inch inside diameter, 45-degree elbow. It does fit, but you do need to cut off the inside of here. You need to angle this side just a little bit on the throttle body side. Again, with the parts that you can swap from other cars, this is an intake manifold from a 328i, which is rated at a little bit more power. This is a 3-stage, so it's got 2 DESA valves in it that change the airflow inside the manifold at different RPMs. Gives you around 20 extra horsepower. Next modification was a set of HZ Racing headers. Now, a little hack for these is these are actually Active AutoWorks headers. They rebrand them and sell them for about $750 here in the US, but you can buy these on AliExpress for around $300. For suspension, I went with a set of Fortune Auto 510 coilovers. These are their second tier coilovers. They're made for road and track use. They also come with a adjustable camber plate on the top. These cars don't have any camber adjustment stock, so that was a huge selling point. We were able to get about 2.8 degrees of camber in the front and about 2.5 in the rear. We have Swift springs. These are 8K fronts and 12K in the rear. For the tune, I ended up going with 22 RPD. They are based out of Washington. All it is a reflash. You need an OBD2 cable and you can load it onto your ECU. Let's head next door. We can check out what it makes on the dyno. the dyno results. As you can see, we picked up a ton of horsepower with these, just a couple bolt-ons here. 20 to 30 horsepower, 3,000 to 4,500. Little dip there. I think that's mainly the DISA valves. I might have one opening slow or closing too slow. The rest of the range, 4,500 to about 6,000, or 40 to 50 horsepower we gained. Here's our before and afters. This is completely stock with just an exhaust. Made 206 and 193. And then after all the modifications, we made 252 horsepower and 236 torque. All right, guys, it's time for the first drive. I'm not one to putz around, so we'll get right into it. We are on Kumos, and it is about 30 degrees out, so they're probably not going to have very much grip, but let's do a little 1, 2, 3. Right away, like the throttle response is right now versus before we had kind of a delay. Even on and off throttle it had a delay. The performance is definitely way better than it was. This thing is going to be a fun little daily driver for sure. The suspension is a lot stiffer. All your inputs are kind of instantaneous with the new suspension. The added camber helps a lot with your corners. Alright, we're going to take a little trip to Canada and we'll get you guys a launch video and see how good this thing does. 0 to however fast I think we can go. In June, and we'll see how much we can better our times by. Last year we did about a 1:48 in the standing start, and I'm hoping for around 7-8 seconds that we can shave off of that. We'll still be on the same tires, but just new suspension, all the power modifications. One thing that I did mention that we did do is a different power steering rack. So this is an M3 steering rack, which is a little quicker ratio than the 128i. Like I said before, some of these parts can swap over. I don't notice it now. You might notice it in autocross. It's just a little stiffer when you're going slow, driving around parking lots and stuff. But other than that, it feels great so far. Hope you guys like this car. Hope you guys like the modifications we did to it and what you guys want to see in the future. We'll see you guys next time when we talk about the Evo 9. We dive into aerodynamics